I have to say the measure makes no social or economic sense. There's no social argument based on fairness or indeed on anything else that justifies cutting the incomes of the lowest earners. Instead, it has been framed as an argument about competitiveness that is influenced by a certain ideology, an ideology that believes that it is those on the lowest pay in our economy who are the ones making it uncompetitive. But this move won't create jobs. It won't reduce our deficit or our debt burden. Instead, it will increase inequality and trap more working people in poverty for the sake of an ideology. An ideology that ignores the enormous social costs associated with poverty and inequality, which cannot be measured on a competitiveness index. This argument about competitiveness implies that we all benefited from the economic boom and consequently we must all share the pain. It also implies a belief that lowering the pay of the lowest earners will remedy a decade of spiralling prices for everything from utilities to household essentials. But it's noteworthy that competitiveness wasn't so much of a concern to the government when they inflated a housing boom that drove up prices to such unsustainable levels. Competitiveness has only recently become a concern to this government, but it has long been a concern to the minimum wage earner. These very people, the people on the lowest income, they understand competition better than anyone, and they certainly know how uncompetitive our economy is. They know that the relative price of essentials, such as the contents of a weekly shop, for example, healthcare, transport, their ESB costs and housing, are all vastly more expensive here than in comparative countries. These people are also the ones who are most sensitive to price increases. When prices were rising faster than their wages, their living standards declined, and now their pay is to be cut ahead of the decline in prices, causing a similar decline in living standards. They know how competitive the labour market is too, because if they have a job, they're told how lucky they are to have it. If they're unfortunate enough to lose their job, then the social safety net of the dole is also being cut to, I quote, to make work pay. I ask, where are all the jobs going to come from to make work pay for the hundreds of thousands on the dole? How will work pay when your basic wage is cut, yet the prices you pay in the shops stay the same or indeed barely fall? Take something as fundamental as healthcare, for example. And unlike the UK, where our pay and welfare rates are commonly compared with, we don't have a national health service. Instead, we have a two-tier system, encouraged by this government's policies of tax breaks on facilities and free transfers of state land to build on for our private hospitals. And this, of course, reinforces a system of have and have not. In Britain, you don't have to pay anywhere between €40 and €70, for example, for a GP visit, fees for a repeat prescription, €100 accident and emergency fees. Without an acknowledgement of this context, it's simply disingenuous to suggest that you're comparing like with like. If the government was serious about competitiveness issues, it would do something worthwhile about the real costs facing business, for example. In the past 10 years, we've had runaway electricity, gas and waste costs, yet nothing of any substance was done to adequately tackle these costs. And still nothing of substance is being done, and instead of making the difficult decisions in these areas, pay cuts are imposed from the bottom up. This decision, of course, has been described as another hard decision that needed to be taken in the national interest. This government seems to revel in its self-imposed role of the hard decision maker. They seem to believe that if a decision is hard, it's also fair. They talk constantly about hard decisions in the national interest, as if by cutting the wages of the lowest earners, they are doing this to help those same low earners.
1 minute, Deputy.
Thank you, Curlick. There's no social justification for this move, and the economic argument is indeed hollow. A race to the bottom on wages serves nobody. We can't compete on cost in a whole manner of globalised industries, and the government knows this. Indeed, it has framed its economic policies around this fact. How many times have we heard the government state that our economic future lies in the smart economy, where we compete in the fields of innovation and ideas, rather than a race to the bottom that we can't win? Finally, can I ask, can a smart economy be based on inequality? Is reinforcing inequality smart? Is trapping the working poor in poverty smart? The answers are clearly no, and yet the government is determined to make another decision that makes no sense and cannot be justified.